Okay, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing okay out there. I see Thika's here. Good morning again, Thika. Good morning, Lim. Good morning, Ying. Good morning, Lily. Pearly, good morning. Cindy's here. Good morning, Cindy. Adalbert's here. Good morning, Adalbert. Ella's here. Hello, Ella. And Mashid is here. Hello, Mashid. Karen's here. Good morning, Karen. Good morning, Min. Who else? Who else do we have here? Eliana's here. Good morning, Eliana. Good morning, Chiffon. Who else? Who else do we have? If this was like 25 years ago, I'd say who else do we have in the house, but people don't say that anymore. It's not cool, so I won't say it. But if this was like 1992, I would say who else is in the house. Jenna's here. Hi, Jenna. Okay, so while people are still kind of trickling in, here's what we'll do today. We'll talk a little bit more about Buddhism. We started talking about that yesterday, and so I think it's worth talking about a little more. I have a little activity for us to try, a little activity for us to attempt, and we'll see how it goes. I've never done this before, so it should be interesting. And then we'll do a little bit of sort of regular textbook reading. Okay, so 3 things that we have to do today. I'm probably going to sneeze in a second, but we'll see. Okay. I think I'm going to dive right in. Hopefully we're all ready to go. Yesterday, as I'm sure you will remember, we were talking about some of the important things that came out of this Vedic age, right? So this, good morning, Manish. This kind of fusion of cultures between these Indo-Aryans who came from kind of the northwest of India, from what's now kind of Afghanistan and Turkmenistan, and sort of the people who are living in India already. And so this kind of fusion of cultures leads to a few developments that become important later on, right? We have this kind of religious tradition called Brahmanism that comes out of this period, and that kind of serves as the foundation for Hinduism, which we'll develop later, and of course is still a major world religion. The development of Sanskrit, the Sanskrit language, comes into existence at this time, and of course it will continue to be used as kind of a formal religious language, but also it will evolve into a bunch of other languages as well. So it's kind of the Sanskrit is a parent language to Hindi and Punjabi and Bengali and Urdu and other languages that exist in that part of the world today. And finally, the Varna social system, and so that's important because it will evolve into a more complicated caste system later on in India, and that still patterns the lives of some people who live in India today. So all of these things that are an important part of the modern world in that part of the world, those things appear during this period, right? Good morning, Sabrina. So we said that these Varnas there were 4 of them. There were Brahmins and Kshatriyas and Vaishyas and Shudras, and those were priests, chiefs and warriors, kind of regular common people, farmers and traders and so on. And then Shudra, people who were kind of at the bottom of society and were servants or laborers, right? We said that people were born into these social classes, so they were hereditary. You belonged to the same Varna as your parents did, and that the Varna that you belong to influenced the kind of job you would have in society, but also kind of how pure you were, what your role in religious ceremonies was, and kind of how people would treat you, right? And so if you were a Brahmin or a Kshatriya, people would kind of look up to you. If you were a Shudra, people would look down on you. And so that kind of organized the way that society worked. We said that Brahmanism was kind of the beginning of Hinduism, and so the Rig Veda, which we've talked about a little bit earlier on, serves as the kind of bedrock foundation for this tradition. But then more Vedas get added throughout this period, and so there's Brahmanas, which are kind of a textbook of how to do certain rituals for the Brahmins, and there's the Upanishads, which are um, teachings and thoughts about the nature of people and the nature of their place in the universe. And so we said these people who are thinking about this kind of stuff and write it down in the Upanishads, they come up with these principles of Brahman, Atman, transmigration, and karma. And so we talked about these briefly yesterday, and so there's an important element of reincarnation here. And so that was different from the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians, right? Because for the Mesopotamians and Egyptians, you were born, you lived your life, you died, and then you went somewhere else, and that was it, right? And so the Mesopotamians, the Sumerians had their view of the afterlife. We talked about the Egyptians, and of course they had a kind of a paradise that they would go to, which was very similar to the lives they lived on Earth. But it was kind of a linear trip, right? You were born, you lived, you died, and then you went to paradise or the afterlife, and that's kind of it. But in this tradition, there's a cyclical thing, right? You are born, you live your life, you die, but then you're born again in another way, right? And so these kind of sages, these kind of gurus who are writing in the Upanishads say that, there's this cycle of birth and death and rebirth, and human beings are kind of stuck in it, okay? And so that's the process of transmigration, the process of reincarnation. And your birth, your next birth, whatever it is, are determined by the law of karma. And so if you do good deeds, you will be reborn as a good thing. And if you do bad deeds, you will be reborn as a bad thing. I'm kind of hoping in my next life that I get reincarnated as a cat, because I think cats have pretty good lives. Dogs too. I'll take a cat or a dog for my next life. But yeah, if you don't do good deeds, then you don't get to be a good thing. You get to be an unpleasant thing, I guess. So that was the thing that these gurus came up with, these sages that wrote in Upanishads. And so what they were suggesting is that the only way out of this continuous cycle of death and rebirth is to understand that your soul, your Atman, the sort of deepest heart of you, is an expression of the ultimate reality of Brahman. And so I think the idea here is, and I'm not an expert on this, but I think the idea is to realize that there's no such thing. Do the incarnations stop? That's a good question. I don't think they do. I think I might be wrong on this, but I'm gonna give you my best understanding of how this works, but I could be wrong. So how this works is that you think you're caught in this cycle of death and rebirth, right? And you're constantly trying to do good things in your next life so that you can be reborn. And I think they continue on and on and on. But the way out, at least as they're talked about in Upanishads, the way out is to realize that that's all an illusion. Because your soul, whatever the thing is that gets reborn over and over again, is no different from the rest of the universe. It's no different from Brahman. So, Karen, you've asked this question. The idea here is that you, Karen, and me, we're not different things. You and I are expressions of the same thing, which is the universe. Siobhan says, I think there might be 7 cycles. That's possible. Again, I'm not an expert in this, and I know that this is kind of the ground level, and more things get added on to Hinduism as it goes. So you might be right, but my current understanding of this, and I might be wrong, my current understanding is that the way out is to realize that the whole thing is an illusion. The whole thing is a perception that you are constantly dying and being reborn, but really you are the same, and you are connected to everything else. And so your current life and your past life and your future life are really no different, right? The rebirth is an illusion, I think. Hopefully I'm not wrong about that. I have a feeling I'm going to be coming back tomorrow and like telling you I was wrong and explaining the real way. To my understanding, that's how it works, but we'll see. I'm not an expert here. Right. And so, how do you figure this out? How do you see past the illusion? Well, you do lots of meditation, right? You do lots of quieting the mind. And through this, you can see through the illusion of this constant wandering, this cycle of rebirth and death and rebirth. In the Upanishads, they say that's just an illusion, right? And if you meditate long enough, you can see past the illusion, I think. And so yesterday we watched a section of that documentary, The Story of India, which is just fascinating, by the way. And we talked about the most influential of Indian thinkers. And we said that it was this guy right here, right? So his name is Siddhartha Gautama, his sort of given name. He comes to be called the Buddha later, which is the awakened one or the enlightened one. We see that he is alive probably around 2,500 years ago, give or take. And of course, he's a philosopher, a meditator, a spiritual teacher, right? And he founds this world religious tradition of Buddhism, one that many, many people still adhere to today. Let me see. Back. Right. So yesterday, it's okay, Sam. Good morning. And Sarvesh is here too. Good morning to you. So we were talking yesterday about the Buddha and what problem, and Jimmy's here too. Hi, Jimmy. The problem he was trying to solve, right? And what we said was he was a prince. Carmen's here too. Good morning, Carmen. Siddhartha Gautama was a prince. He lived a very sheltered life. And when he snuck out of the palace to see what life was like outside the palace, he saw that human beings suffer, right? We get old, we suffer, we get sick, we die. The world is awful, right? Or at least it's much more awful than he thought it was. And so he left the palace, he cut off all his hair, and he went wandering through the countryside, trying to discover the meaning of life and maybe an end to all this suffering. And so you saw in the video yesterday, he was talking a little bit about, he sort of took the traditional path of a guru. He tried to deny himself all earthly pleasures. He didn't eat very much and kind of starved himself in an attempt to sort of clear his mind, kind of thing, and that didn't really work. And finally he sat beneath a Bodhi tree and he figured it out, at least according to him, right? He figured out the way out of suffering, right? The way to escape suffering. And what he determined was this is what he figures out 2,500 years ago approximately. He figures out these four truths. This is his big enlightenment, his big epiphany, if you will. He says we desire impermanent states or things. Okay, so he says suffering comes from desire. It comes from wanting things, and so that can be wanting physical objects, things that you could want, whether it's a car or a fancy house or new shoes or a new iPhone or whatever it is. Desire comes from wanting things. It could be from wanting certain situations, right? You might want your life to be different. You might want to be more independent or more wealthy, or you might not want to be in school. You might want to have a career, or you might not want to have a career at all. You might want to be sitting on a beach in a tropical island somewhere. Whatever it is, Buddha says that you have desire for garbage trucks not to be driving down the alleyway. You have a desire to you want things to be different than they are. That's the basic premise that he's working on here, is that your humans desire things to be different. They either want things they don't have, they want things to change that are currently staying the same, or they want something that is they want a situation to never change, which doesn't happen either. Okay? So he says we desire impermanent states or things, right? But we are incapable of satisfying or maintaining these things. And that is painful. That is the suffering, right? So Buddha is saying that it's not that your life is really bad now, it's that you want it to be different. And the wanting it to be different is what causes you to suffer, right? You might want a new iPhone or a new pair of sneakers or, a fancy car, but you are not unhappy without the car. You're unhappy because you want the car and you don't have it. So it's the wanting, it's the desire, okay? And so he says that wanting things to be different than they are, being attached to physical things, being attached to the way things are or the way things are not, that's how we suffer. And he says this is what keeps us caught in this endless cycle of death and rebirth and this endless cycle of suffering. And so he says there's a way out. There's a way out. It's the state of nirvana. And so the idea here is that you are not desiring anything at all, okay? You can still enjoy things when they happen, and so if it's a nice sunny day, you can still enjoy the sunny day, or if somebody brings you a piece of chocolate cake, you can still enjoy the chocolate cake. But the Buddha says that you should free yourself from the desire to want all of those things, because wanting those things and not getting them and so it's about being in the present. It's about being in the present time and in the present space and simply accepting and enjoying what is in front of you rather than constantly looking around for other things to want that you don't have that then make you miserable. Okay? That's kind of what he's saying. And so he says that the way to enlightenment are through these noble eightfold paths. So there's eight things that you need to do. So he talks about right view. So remembering that our actions have consequences, and again that death is not the end, and our beliefs have consequences after death. He says right resolve or intention, and so here he talks about giving up home and life to sort of follow this path toward enlightenment. Right speech. He says no lying, don't be rude, don't gossip behind other people's backs, don't do that. Right conduct. Don't kill anyone, don't steal things, don't engage in sexual misconduct. I'm not sure exactly what that entails, but I'm sure he has an idea of what he's talking about. Right livelihood. Gaining one's livelihood by benefiting others, not by selling weapons or poisons or things like that, right? So you should, if you have a job, you should make your money in a way that helps people. Right effort, presenting the arising of unwholesome states and generating wholesome states. So giving your effort to things that are wholesome and good, right? Right mindfulness, so being mindful of these teachings that allow you to move toward enlightenment. And then right samadhi, so practicing meditation. These are the 8 things that Buddha comes up with that will help you to move towards enlightenment, right? So, very quickly here, following his enlightenment, what does the Buddha do? What does he do? He sits under the Bodhi tree. He comes up with all of these ideas, and then what does he do? Yeah, so Sarvesh says, yeah, he teaches people, right? He wanders the countryside, spreading what he's learned, teaching people what he's learned, teaching people how to meditate, and kind of spreading what he's discovered, right? Yeah, he moves to other places. He travels kind of through the northern section of India around the Ganges, spreading his teachings. Yeah. Good morning, Michael. This is kind of interesting. The host of the documentary mentions that how is Buddhism atheistic? So to be atheistic is someone who doesn't believe in God. And so what does the host say about how is Buddhism atheistic? How is Buddhism atheistic? Did you get that one? Oops, put up twice. Yeah. How is Buddhism atheistic? Karen says it comes about as a result of people not believing in the first telling of gods. Okay. What else do we have? Sounds pretty good. What else do we have? There's 14 people out there. Did you fall asleep? Come on. Come on. How is Buddhism atheistic? So Sarvesh, this is a practice of spiritual liberation. Okay. No ties to God, you think. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna go back to Karen's here. So a couple of interesting things here. In the documentary, Michael Wood, I think his name is, he says that in a way, Buddhism is atheistic because Buddha says even attachment to God is an attachment, right? You're praying to God because you want something from them, right? You want them to change your current situation, right? You're asking them for something. Please, can I get the new iPhone? No. or you're praying for something to happen or for something to not happen. But the Buddha says any one of those things will lead you to suffer because again, you're wanting things to be different than they are, and that's often why people pray to gods, because they are wanting things to be different, right? They want something to be preserved the way it is. They want something to change. They want someone to be protected. all kinds of things that they might want. And the Buddha is saying, no, you shouldn't. Wanting those things is what makes you unhappy, and it's what kind of locks you in this cycle of death and rebirth. And so it's interesting because, yeah, it is a practice of spiritual liberation, but it's also the Buddha figures this out. He becomes enlightened on his own, right? And this is what's really interesting about what's happening here in India, because in other places in the world that we've studied, knowledge and wisdom comes from the gods, right? The gods reveal things to human beings, right? You pray to the god to get things. So knowledge comes from up there, right? The gods reveal knowledge to you. We skipped over, in the textbook, we skipped over the Israelites and sort of the birth of Judaism, but that's the same thing, right? If you look in the Bible, God is the source of knowledge, and he reveals knowledge to the people, right? Moses goes up the mountain to get the 10 commandments, and God gives those 10 commandments, those 10 laws to the Israelites, to the Hebrews, right? So in many cultures, and in the cultures we've studied already, knowledge comes from up there, right? The gods reveal it to us. But here, in a very interesting twist, the Buddha figures it out himself, right? The knowledge doesn't come from the heavens. The knowledge came from in here, right? From meditation, which is super interesting. And it's kind of, I'm going to go back to Karen's comment there. It's a secularization of learning about the universe. And so the universe works a certain way, and the Buddha says this is how it works, and this is what you need to do. And God, or the gods, are not part of the equation. They're not involved in this at all, which is really interesting. And again, something that doesn't really come up very often in religions. Most of the time, people are given knowledge by the gods, or they pray to the gods and the gods reveal something to them. This is a really interesting case of people figuring something out on their own. And if you think about it that way, it's almost very similar to science, right? The Buddha doesn't do things scientifically, but he assumes that the universe works in a certain way, and he uses his powers of observation and thought in order to explain it. And that's kind of exactly what logic and rationalism and science are all about. Again, he doesn't go about things scientifically, but he imagines the universe works in a predictable way, and he thinks he can figure it out if he just thinks about it enough, which is, again, very connected to science. So super interesting. What are his dying words? What are the Buddha's dying words? Erase my browser history. No, that's not it. What are his dying words? What does he say on his deathbed to his followers? Peace out. See you in the next life. What's he say? Okay, yeah, that was part of it, Karen. His followers were saying, "Hey, why don't you choose to die in a much nicer place, maybe a big palace or a nicer city?" And he does say that place is fitting. It's just a very simple area that he dies. I didn't actually write this down, so Everyone dies one day. It's true, right? His followers were sad about the fact that he was dying, and he was telling them, "Hey, this is the human condition, right? We are born, we live, and we die. That's you know." Um, and again, that would be connected to his philosophy, right? Because his followers are wanting something to be different, right? They're wanting him not to die, but of course they have no control over him dying or not, and so they are wanting they're wanting something different than what it is, and so that will make them miserable. That will make them suffer, right? But everyone does die, and I think I didn't write this down actually. I was kind of counting on you guys to do it for me, but what I think he says is that you know now go forth and and spread this knowledge, right? I've done my part. Now it's your turn, right? It's your turn to continue to spread what we've learned, right? At least I think that's what he said. So he dies in about 480 BC, and his students do just that. So they establish little communities, little monasteries known as Sangha, and they sort of set up, I guess, training programs, if you will. And so people can come and be Buddhist monks, and they can pursue enlightenment, pursue nirvana, pursue an end to suffering, just like the Buddha achieved, right? Oh, okay. Here we go. All right, this is what we're going to do. In this class, there are a few core competencies. And so one of them is a personal and social responsibility. And what this core competency has to do with is a bit of personal development. So learning about ourselves, learning about our strengths and weaknesses, learning how to identify goals, learning how to operate within a larger group. And I think this is a good opportunity to talk about that stuff in the context of what we're learning about Buddhism. And so here's what I want to do. So the Buddha says that the last step, the eighth step of the eightfold path is right samadhi. So practicing meditation. And meditation, of course, is a practice where individuals use mindfulness to kind of quiet their mind and enter a mentally clear and emotionally calm state. And so my question for you is, does anyone here meditate? Do you meditate? Yes or no? Do you do any meditation? Okay, Sarvash tried. Karen says no. Okay. No. Okay. Sheet says no. All right. No. All right. Aliana's done a bit. Okay. Lots of no's. Okay. Well, this is good. I've done a very little bit, not a lot, but I think that's funny. This will be interesting then, because I want to try this. I want us to actually try and meditate for a little bit. It's not quite as easy as you might think if you've never done it. It seems like you're doing nothing, but it's actually really difficult. And so what we'll do is this, okay? Um, I'm going to give you a link. I'll put it into Microsoft Teams so that you can easily access it. And what I want you to do is this. I want you to watch this video, and the video is not so much watch, listen to the video. The video is is a guided meditation. So the woman in the video will talk a little bit about meditation, and then she'll kind of guide you through how to do it. And what I would like you to do is actually give it a try. Okay, see if you can pay attention to what she says. See if you can do what she says, and just see how it works for you. It's not going to be easy. One of the things that she's going to tell you to do is to focus on your breathing. And what you want to do is, while you're focusing on your breathing, your mind is going to want to talk to you. Okay, your brain is going to want to tell you all sorts of things. It's going to want to distract you. It's going to want to talk to you about all of the concerns of your life. And kind of what you're going to do is kind of push them away. Okay, so your mind might immediately start talking to you about, oh, this assignment you have to do, and you're just going to push it away, and you're going to come back to focusing on your breathing. Okay, and it's going to happen a lot because your mind is most of our minds are very chatty, and they won't shut up, and so they're going to try to keep talking to you, and you're just going to keep pushing those voices away for now, and you're just going to focus on your breathing. Okay, and just listen to what the woman in the video says. So again, I want you to watch the video, see if you can stay with it, and then just see how you feel afterwards, and see if it works, or what's difficult or what's not difficult. Okay, so I'm going to put the link in there. I put the link in Microsoft Teams, and so I'll give you about 20 minutes to watch the video. Again, get yourself seated somewhere that's comfortable. Listen to what she tells you, try to do it, and then we'll see how it feels. Okay, we'll see what we come out with at the end. Okay, so go watch the video, meditate as best you can. Again, focus on your breathing. Thoughts will try to come into your head. Just kind of push them away and go back to your breathing. Okay. I'll see you in 20 minutes, and then we'll just see what we've come up with. Okay. All right. Good luck. Okay, and we're back. So I'm kind of curious, how did it go? Was it difficult? Was it easy? Did you fall asleep and that's why you're not answering? No, I know it takes a minute. I'll wait. So Aliana feels calm. You're probably used to doing that, though, right? Because you've meditated before, right? And we all know how Alicia can be. No, I'm just kidding. You're great, Alicia. You're great. Um, so Sarvesh, you feel sleepy? Okay. This is so interesting. Yeah, why is this interesting? It's hard. Yeah, those. Uh, for me, my thoughts, Karen, were, I kept thinking about what I was going to say next when I got back on camera with you guys, and I had to keep kind of pushing those out of the way. But they kept coming, and a few personal thoughts came in as well. But a lot of it was, what I was going to say when we started talking again, and I had to push them away. But yeah, it's it's interesting how our minds are talking to us so often that we don't really pay attention to it anymore, and we just get used to it. But when you're purposely trying to just stay in the present moment, it's interesting how your mind wants to keep talking to you, right? It wants to keep telling you things. Well, I'm curious, Thika, I'm curious why it's so interesting. Come on, give me more. What was it like? What was it like? Did it do anything? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Was it interesting? Why was it interesting? How do you feel now? Do you feel the same as you felt before? Do you feel different? I feel it's so hard to be. Yeah, it is really hard to pay attention, hey? Um, what else? Tell me more. Tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. Similar to being able to lucid dream, yeah, if you can do that sort of thing. I'm not able to, but Thika says, because I've never tried to hear something like that before. Yeah, it's really interesting. Do you feel, Thika? Do you feel different now? Karen says it's hard to focus. Don't hate your mind. Don't hate your mind, Karen. Because it thinks when you don't need it, but yeah, but when but when you're in an exam, where is it? Yeah, okay, that's funny. Adalbert says, yeah, it is really difficult, right? Um, One of the things that sometimes they'll teach you in meditation, and again, I've done very little of it, um, is that those thoughts that keep coming into your head, they're kind of your mind talking to you, but they're not really you. And so sometimes we have this kind of inner monologue going in our head. We're kind of talking to ourselves all day long, and we think it's just us, but really, we are engaged with our mind, right? There's this kind of other voice, and if we sort of stop the conversation, and if we just try to focus on our breathing, then this other voice keeps trying to start the conversation again. But it's very interesting, because if you're paying attention to your breathing, and you are staying in the present moment, and you're hearing all the sounds around you, and then there's this voice that's like, hey, blah 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 blah, what's that voice, right? Where's that voice coming from? And it's not necessarily you, right? And so one of the things that sometimes they teach you in the course of meditation is that your thoughts aren't you, right? They're products of your brain sort of chattering away to you, because that's what it's programmed to do. But it's not necessarily you. The steps are simple. Oh, the lucid dream thing, yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Very interesting, though. But yeah, it's that I was gonna say, Thika, I was gonna say that too. I feel really, I feel like things have slowed down. I feel like I'm more centered and more aware. Um, I feel like there's kind of less happening around me, even though there's nothing happening around me. I'm just in my apartment here. But I feel, yeah, I feel like things have kind of calmed down and I feel centered anyway. Um, what do you what do you think though? Do you think it might be something that you would try again? Um, if you're interested, there's on YouTube or um, there's certain apps that can lead you through a meditation like Annika did. The one that Annika did had to do with if you're going through a difficult time, but there's tons of other meditations that will kind of you know people with soothing voices that will kind of lead you through a meditation like that. Um, yeah, it is hard because it's slow, right? It's we are our brains are so used to going really quickly, and we have a lot of information coming at us from our computers and our phones and people around us, and we're kind of caught in a very busy situation sometimes. And yeah, it's um, I hear you, it's very difficult to sort of go slow. Before I did any meditation, I probably would have told you that I didn't have a very busy mind, or I didn't think I had a busy mind. But it turns out I do. And I think probably all of us do. Yeah, well, obviously. Karen says yes. Okay. Try it again. Maybe. Maybe. Okay. Um, it's very, yeah, it's a very interesting practice. And again, it's very simple. Like it seems like it's very simple to do, but actually to properly do it actually requires a lot of effort, right? It's difficult to stay with your breathing and keep pushing away those thoughts. And of course, the longer you stay in it, the more thoughts you have to push away. But I don't know. Interesting experiment though. Maybe. Okay. Well, here's what we'll do, good people. That was an interesting experiment. Let's take a little break, stretch your legs, and when we come back, I'll get you to do some reading. Okay, but take a little break for now. I'll see you in 10 minutes, and then we'll do the next thing. Okay. Okay, people, and we're back. So, um, we've been talking a little bit about the Buddha and what his kind of noble truths are, right? And of course, he came up with this idea that suffering is connected to desire, and your attachment to things that you have, or things that you want to have, or conditions that you want to change, or conditions that you already have that you don't want to change. And the Buddha says that all of that stuff is impermanent. You have no control over those things. And so if you're continually attached to things that you can't change, you will be miserable, you will suffer. And so he argued that if you were able to release yourself from that desire, that you would release yourself from suffering, right? And he sort of came to this through meditation, but he also argued that meditation would lead you to that ability to disconnect from desire, right? Because if you think about it, what we were doing was we were trying to stay in the present moment, right? We were trying to stay right where we were and just listen and feel and breathe, right? And so if you think about it, if you're totally in the present moment, you don't really have space to sort of want things that aren't there. You don't have mental space to think about the past. You don't have mental space to think about the future and what might happen later today or tomorrow or in 10 years. All you have is the present around you. And so for him, I think part of that separating from desire is being fully present in the moment and not thinking about the past or the future, which is much easier than, or much more difficult than it sounds. But I don't know, do you guys still feel kind of calm and centered? Because I think I do. I think I think I can still feel it, even though it was just a few minutes of meditation. I think it worked for me anyway. Okay, so back to this stuff. What I want to ask you to read a short section of the textbook, because tomorrow I want to talk about Ashoka. You just feel fine? That's good. Like fine because of the meditation, or just like average fine? I don't know. Yeah, tomorrow I want to talk about Ashoka, who is a king in India. But in order to kind of understand him and what his thing is, we have to know a little bit about the history going into this period. And so we're going to just read a quick section of the text that talks about the Mauryan Empire, which sort of arises shortly after the death of the Buddha, although the two events aren't connected. But chronologically speaking, the Buddha will die, and then this Mauryan Empire will appear later. And so Chandragupta Maurya will sort of create the empire, and then his grandson Ashoka will take it over a little bit later. And again, I want to talk about Ashoka in a bit more detail. So what I would like to invite you to do then is to read this short section of the text and answer the questions. I just popped this into Microsoft Teams, so you have the questions and the section of the text. And so let's see. I think that'll probably take us the rest of class. And so I think what I'll do is I'll let you read this section. I'll let you answer the questions. Don't forget to type them out. People, type them out. Don't forget to type them out. And then first thing tomorrow, we will deal with these questions, and we'll look a little deeper into Ashoka and his empire, and sort of what makes him so what makes him so interesting and different. Okay, so I'll give you this section to read, answer the questions. First thing tomorrow, we will take up these questions, and we will we'll deal with Ashoka. Okay, So any questions for me? And maybe the other thing I'll ask too, maybe not ask, but I'll suggest, um, a little bit later today or tonight, if you have some time, maybe try the meditation thing again. Set a little timer on your phone for 5 minutes or so, and just focus on your breathing in and out. And if your mind tries to talk to you, just kind of gently push it away and try to stay in the present. Listen to what's around you, feel your body, feel your breathing, and just see what happens. If you're curious, 5 minutes would do it. But again, I won't tell you to do it, but I invite you to do it. Okay, so I will let you read that section of the text, do the questions. They're in Microsoft Teams right now. And then first thing tomorrow, we'll deal with them, okay? So, do you have any questions for me, or last things you'd like to say before I sign off, or are you good? Let me know. Are you good? Are you okay? Is there anything else you want to say about meditation or Buddha or the textbook or anything? Okay, lots of goods. Sabrina's good, Karen's good, Mashida's good, Dika's good, Cindy's good, Sarvish is good, Liana's good, Carmen's good, Lim is good, Pearly's good. Okay. Yeah, so do the reading, do the questions. If you are so inclined, try the meditation thing a little bit later today or tonight if you want, and see how it goes. Yeah. Pearly's good, Sam's good, Ying is good, Adalbert's good. Okay. All right. So I'll sign off there. I will leave you to do those questions. And yeah, tomorrow, take up the questions and we will talk about Ashoka. Okay. So hope everyone has a nice afternoon. It was lovely to quote unquote see you. It was lovely to see you and talk to you. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Okay. So bye.